All right, Gabrielle, I'm excited to have you. Thank you so much for taking this time to talk to us about personal brand and all the other things related to that. Why don't you tell all of us a little bit about yourself, like what you're doing now, and then we can kind of dig into the personal branding stuff. But let's give everybody an intro.
Yeah. So, yes, my name's Gabrielle. I am a sales development manager. I started off my career in tech sales as an SDR about 5 years ago. And so since then have held titles such as SDR, account executive, sales enablement manager. And so I've been focused on the SDR manager position. And at the date at which this is being recorded, I'm about to leave my company Infutor now, and I just accepted a role as an SDR manager at Gong. So Breaking news! You heard it first here. So,
and
so yeah.
Well, okay, stop right there. I mean, that's amazing. The fact that you just dropped that bomb on me. I'm going to clip this out and share this immediately. Anyway, Congratulations. I mean, Gong's an amazing company. The fact that you've gotten hired there, I mean, that's going to help the rest of this conversation we're going to have with you a lot. I mean, congratulations. Gong's an amazing company. I know several people that work there. Excellent technology, and they treat their employees really well. So congratulations.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes, and I think even the journey to get to Gong resonates. It runs in parallel with what we're going to talk today. I don't know what we're going to talk about today exactly, but I have a feeling the story of getting to Gong is going to align very well to personal branding and how important it is.
Well, you're going to tell that story in 2 seconds. First off, what I would like from you, how do you define your personal brand? If somebody said, what's a personal brand? Gabrielle would say, oh, this is what that means.
Oh, man. So for me, the way that I consider myself is a modern day hippie witch. That's the best way to describe myself. And so if I looked at my LinkedIn profile from 2 years ago, knowing what I know now, I would say there is nothing there's nothing on my profile that would connect to how I see myself. It's very much around, all right, hey, I'm just trying to get employed. I'm trying to be professional. I'm supposed to be clean cut, but that's not actually who I am. So when I'm thinking about, all right, how do I want to be perceived? And it's how I choose to be perceived. I do tarot card readings. I do work with oracles. I work with divination tools. I have plants all over the place in my house. And those are the things that I really enjoy most.
Wait, I need to stop you right there. Are you talking figuratively? Or
no,
you do this?
Is real. I do this.
I'm going to have a live tarot card reading with Gabrielle at a future date. Everyone, stay tuned.
Yeah. So for me, my tagline on my profile says sales development SaaStress, plant mama, divination diva. And so these are all reflections of who I am. And I think I had to, even in that, how to get comfortable with who I am and then share more of who I am. And that to me is truly what personal branding is really about, is how do I see myself? How do I insert myself more into my environment? And then how do I get comfortable sharing more of myself? And as I'm doing that, who are the people that I'm going to connect to? Who am I going to build relationships with? What am I going to share with them, right? And how am I going to bring value in that? So that to me has been the way that I've been approaching personal branding.
Have you always had this self-awareness, or
no.
Is it something that, because just step one of what you mentioned about knowing who you are, knowing what you want to represent, that first part of knowing who you are, how did you explore that?
Oh my gosh, that we could have 2 or 3 episodes of just that. But long story short is, I would say about 2-3 years ago, I had a pretty epic breakdown. And when I kind of came to from this breakdown, I was like, you know what? I haven't really been living life the way that I've wanted to. I've just been following somebody else's directions and guidance. And I'm taking everybody else's words as more superior than how I feel about things. I'm going to stop doing that. And so I just started to explore who I was, what I was interested in. I'd also taken a year off of work to really support that effort as well. And so in being almost insulated from any other influences around me, I got to know who I really was. And I was like, wow, I'm really cool. I really love myself. I think I'm great. And I think I'm super weird and unique, and it's wonderful, and it makes me laugh. And so once I built up that confidence in myself, because I really was being who I saw myself to be, then it's like, all right, well, now I can walk into places with my head held a little bit higher and standing up a little bit taller in the virtual world, right? Like sharing my unique point of view that much more. So that it really hasn't been until the past couple of years where I feel like I developed that sense of awareness.
And then at what point did you realize, or I guess just come to the awareness that there is a thing called a personal brand? You know,
Mm.
what were you doing this ahead of time when you were kind of doing this introspection, or was there a moment that you just realized, oh, this is a thing. Like, people are going to know this about me, and then you started trying to grow that.
So I think I've just been stumbling through it. There, I'll start off by saying this. So I had joined a couple of online communities, specifically Revenue Collective, and what I really wanted to get out of the experience was, one, building community, but then also learning and growing with like-minded individuals and professionals. And so I was in one of the channels, SDR Leadership or SDR, and people are asking questions that I knew how to answer, and people were requesting resources that I had built. So I'm like, let me share this out in this kind of smaller community. It's like, oh, this is great. I'm getting a lot of feedback on it, positive feedback specifically. And then there came the thought of, well, people in Revenue Collective are really appreciating this. Like, what if I started sharing this out on LinkedIn? And then there was another piece that was going on, which was at the company I'm at, I was asked to create some content specifically around how to enable SDRs to make a transition into an AE seat. And we had never implemented it. I was like getting so frustrated. So I'm like, I built all this stuff. I would really like to see if it works, how it works. And I'm not being given that chance. I'm like, rather than me sitting on this, what I think is gold, let me share it out. So I think I was just like, it was like one part I was getting validated in Revenue Collective, and on the other part I was getting frustrated about things not being put into action. But I was like, you know what, I'm just going to give it to somebody else and see if that works. So once I started doing that, it's like, oh, this is really great content. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. And after a while, I was like, well, I really like writing on these things. I like writing on what it's like to be in sales management. I like writing about what it's like to cold call and those kind of things. And then came up like the sales development SaaStress title, like just for fun. And then people started referring to me as such. So like it very much was like, I'm just going to take one step forward, get a feel for the like what I'm receiving in terms of feedback, take another step forward and see if that builds some momentum up. So that's been the journey of personal branding thus far.
And did you call yourself the SaaStress, or was that something that the moniker was just thrown at you and you just
No,
accepted
I
it?
created it. I was just at home, probably looking at my tarot card set, thinking about the word like enchanted and enchantress. And I was like, oh, SaaStress. And I can vividly remember typing that into my LinkedIn tagline, probably at like 11 o'clock at night, and cracking up laughing while I was doing it. I was like, you're such a weirdo, but this could work. And so it's stuck.
Yeah, and the reason I asked, like, there's another individual. If you don't know who he is, his name's Jack Kosakowski. He works for a company. What's the name? That creative agency, I believe. Anyway, he used to work at Acton. In fact, maybe you guys crossed paths. That was going to be something that I asked also.
What's his
He built
name?
his entire personal brand when he was at Acton, and so it was interesting to me because he created the name Sasanova. And so his LinkedIn headline was, he was the LinkedIn Sasanova or something along those lines. And that alone, just that interest of like, what does that mean? Like, drove a
Yes.
lot of just conversation. So
Yes,
it's a
it
solid
does.
move.
It is. I'm like, I need to get this trademarked or copyrighted, one of the two.
So tell me the story. I mean, you're making this move. I mean, I think this
hmm
is totally germane to what it was. So you've covered like how you thought about it, like where it is today, and kind of how that's manifested. Like, how have you leveraged this in your career? And I think that just goes right into the story that
hmm
of this transition you're making now.
Yeah. So I'll say this. So the hiring manager from Gong reaches out to me, like sends me a LinkedIn message and is like, hey, drops in a link about their $200 million
Funding.
fundraising. Yeah. And it's like $2 billion valuation. And I'm sitting there looking at this message, number one, thinking, we already use Gong where I'm at. And I was like, oh, wait, He's a hiring manager. Is he about to ask you to interview? And that was it. So I was asking him, I'm like, how did you find me? Those kind of things. And he had mentioned that for whatever reason, whichever day it was, something that I had posted on LinkedIn came up on his newsfeed. And so he just started following me, was looking at the content that I was posting over maybe a few weeks, and then was like, I think that he's like, I love what you're doing. I really like your content. I think you're spot on, and would love to see you go through our candidate journey. So like that was an opportunity that presented itself because I was posting on LinkedIn. So I was like, if that's not like the perfect example for why people should be working on their personal brand on LinkedIn, I don't know what is.
And this goes into that. I mean, this is a prime example where I say visibility creates opportunity, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
universal, like paradigm. And everywhere I go, I see it. But like you were just putting yourself out there, and there was no ask, there was no kind of, I guess, expectation that this would lead into this. Like you just started doing this, and that visibility just started creating this opportunity for you. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it takes. I think it does take a leap of faith, right? Because I can think back, I'm like sitting on my bed, I've got my laptop in front of me, and I'm like, I want to post something. Should I? Should I not? Are they going to hate it? Am I stupid? And it's like, well, what if people love it? And I think I would always ask myself that question at the end, but like before keeping myself from doing something, I'd say, but what if people loved it? Like, let me share it out. So it does take some time, right? It's not necessarily a question, somebody requesting for me to post content. It's more so a question towards myself of, am I willing to share my point of view, regardless of what happens?
I watched a interview with Kobe Bryant that he had many years ago, and he had this entire monologue around what if, and it was extremely powerful. And you just kind of illustrated like there's a million what ifs of what could go wrong, but if you just spend half of that time thinking about what if it went right, and you manifested that, it would be amazing. So yeah, I
Yes.
mean, I think that's the right way of going about it. So are you naturally you know risk averse? I would almost assume that, but your
Hmm.
behavior is different. Are you
Yeah.
naturally just putting yourself out there? Because, and the reason why I say that it would seem that you were risk averse is that you're having this internal dialogue. Should I post this?
Mm.
Should I not? You know, as opposed to like, oh, I don't care. I'm just going to share everything out there. How did you get past that phase of it of like worrying about how you're going to be perceived? I think that's one of the biggest things that
Yeah.
people face is the lack of confidence that nobody's going to know, nobody's going to want to hear what I'm saying.
Yeah. You know, I would say, like I alluded to having this epic breakdown. And in reflecting upon that period or when that happens, if I were to think about what sourced that experience, it was because I cared way too much about what people thought of me. And I put more energy into meeting somebody else's expectations, even if that meant sacrificing parts of myself. And so to suffer like the worst case scenario of living for somebody else's expectations, I kind of just realized I'm like, I'm not going to do that anymore because I know what that can lead me to. I'd rather figure out who I am and aim towards what I envision myself to be, which is something way more than anybody else would ever expect of me. So it really took having to suffer a pretty epic and devastating experience to be like, you know what, there's a much better way of living, and I'm just going to challenge myself, even though I have had this kind of inclination towards keeping things more so to myself.
Yeah, it's a sad reality of life, but there is no growth without pain. And
Mm,
sometimes the bigger the pain, the bigger the opportunity on the outside of that tunnel.
mm,
So nothing comes easy. I mean, it's a shame that people have to go through these things. But it's as long as I believe if you keep a positive mindset and you follow that
yes,
energy is the way you say it, you will always come out. I mean, there is no other alternative. Um, yeah, I mean, all pain comes through, all success comes through struggles. And I think this
yes,
is a testament to that.
yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was a deep low, but it allowed me to realize I'm like, oh wow, there's a much higher plane that I could engage with. So let me go after it.
Awesome. And then, when you started this process, how did you go about it? Like, were you thinking, I want to be a celebrity? Do I just want my peers to know who I am? What was your kind of initial path? Like, what was your were you dipping your toe in, or were you just diving off the high dive?
You know what? I should be so honest about this. I remember, I think so. I've been able to connect with Nikki Ivy a little bit more these past few months, and freaking love her. But before I actually got a chance to connect with her, I saw her name popping up all over the place, especially like immediately following George Floyd's killing. And I was just like, I was listening to what she was saying. I was seeing all the ways that she was showing up on my news feed, and my initial response was jealousy because I was just like, well, why can't I have that? And then I remember, like, I was on a drive. I live in Chicago, or right outside of Chicago, and I was on my way to Indiana, about an hour and a half to my grandparents' house. And I was just trying to think to myself, like, why am I jealous about this person? I've never met them. They're doing great work. They're talking about the things that I like. And it clicked to me. I was like, oh, I just have something to learn from them. That's it. Like, it has absolutely nothing to do with whether they can and I can't. It's they've figured something out and I haven't figured it out yet. Let me instead just learn from her instead. And so, in recognizing, or at least in confronting my own jealousy or my own insecurity, and recognizing the only way that you can build a brand, right, is to share. So, like, if I'm just holding everything in and I'm looking at her and saying, oh, wow, like, how is she successful, but I'm not? But the only difference is that she's sharing and I'm not. I'm like, well, what happens when I start sharing? So I didn't have this like full on strategy. I didn't have this like full on vision, right? But I saw that there were people who I felt like I could relate to, whether it's because, she's also a Black woman in the tech space. I was like, there's people who are doing it. And so I'm the only person who's standing in my way right now. So
I think
that's
we
it.
are the
That's a
only ones
super
standing
honest
in our own
moment.
ways most of the time.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
And I can relate to that story on many different layers. The kind of jealousy, like, why are they doing this and I can't? The reality is, it's not a zero sum game, and this is something that I learned early in my career. There was more than enough to go around. It's like saying, which of your children are your favorite? No, I love you both, and there's more than enough to go around.
Mm,
Um, and there's the same thing with success. It is not a zero sum game. And in this ecosystem, this small world of like sales, and the people within it, either the individual contributors up to leaders, to the thought leaders and visionaries, and all those other people, there's more than enough room. And I've always had a firm belief that all boats rise at the tide. And in my
mm,
career, maintaining that philosophy is what's basically allowed me to build these amazing connections and friendships, because there are no haters.
yep.
Everybody is an expert in their own right. And even if you talk about the same types of subjects as me, I'm going to learn things from you and you're going to learn things from me. And there's no reason to have any of these animosities. Now, not to say that there hasn't been animosities, and in the last 7 years, there's been lots of interesting stories that have come out.
Yes.
But I mean, all in all, I mean, that's the right philosophy. And I think initially you look at it, you're like, wait, what are they doing that I should be doing? Da, 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 da. Like, how are they getting this and I'm not getting this? And then you just did it. You flip the switch and you say,
Yeah.
what are they doing different that I can also do? And it's not a
Yes.
matter of taking anything. I mean, there's an art to stealing, and it's been done time and time again. And I think as long as you're adding your own authentic kind of self to whatever that is, it differentiates
Hmm.
it 100%.
Yes. Authenticity is key. So key. I was thinking about this earlier today. I had like made a video. I didn't post it on LinkedIn because I'm like, today's not a day to share. But I was thinking specifically around authenticity, and even okay, so like, I'm a Black woman. I have ways of saying things that are going to be different than what you might hear in a traditional sales floor, like the way that and then also the fact that I've lived in another country, spoke a different language for 2 years, lost my English along the way. So there's certain twangs that I'll do, and it took me all of 2 months in sales to be like, actually, this is working for me. I sound different than most people. I talk faster than a lot of folks. I have a way of standing out just because of who I am and how I'm different than everybody else. And so if it without accepting that being different or being a little bit to the right of normal is just one expression of being authentic, right? That I think a lot of people are missing out on an opportunity to stand out, whether that's you're a salesperson engaging with prospective clients, or you're on LinkedIn working on building your personal brand. So yes, authenticity is key.
Authenticity is key. So what's next? I mean, obviously you've got this bright new opportunity ahead of you. Which is amazing. Like, if you were to think 10 years down the road, whatever that may be, like, where do you want to be? Do you want, and again, like, obviously this isn't getting cast in stone, but I believe that everything's always based on goal setting. So what is that next
Yes.
goal? Yeah, what is that next goal?
Ooh, I think I've been afraid to set goals for a little while. So I've just got, like, in the past year, I've started setting goals for myself once again.
It seems to be working for you. FYI.
Yeah, it is big time. I mean, like, for my end, 10 years from now, I think I have a goal, right? I don't know what the timeline is around that, but I definitely see myself being like a chief revenue officer, hands down, because I got hella opinions on how things should be done, and I love to learn. I really do. I'm reading all the time. I'm following Patreon groups. I'm wanting to connect with people. I want to better understand what's, like, how things are done, like what's not working, what kind of works okay, what's killer, and staying up on the industry trends and things like that. And I see probably also the people I'm most critical of in like these, like, chief whatever roles they are, and I'm like, no, I could do this. So, like, let me learn my way into that position 100%. But in 10 years, hell, I might be running a company by then. That's what I think.
You might.
I
With
might
this
be,
with this
yeah.
attitude. I always say attitude determines altitude, and you're pretty far up there already.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, 2020 has been good to me. I've been making moves. It's been awesome. There's been a lot of opportunities to grow, connect, learn, and then also within that, getting connected to more people in the C-suite and learning from them and recognizing, okay, well, the only real difference between them and me is a matter of experience. So it's kind of like what did Scottie Pippen say? It's like, my day will come. I'm like, yes, and I want to, like, put in the work to make sure I get there too.
Yeah, I believe it's always a matter when you're young in your career, but even me, like, you have to focus on building skills. That has to be job number one. Because the more skills you have, the more marketable you are. I mean, this world changes so fast, especially the industry that we're in. If you're not keeping up, you're going to be left behind, and that's a problem with a lot of, I'd say, the senior leaders. Like, they've just gotten to the point where they're just like, I don't want to learn anymore. So now you have this next generation rising of hungry
Yeah,
professionals that are like, I don't care, throw it all at
yeah,
me, I'll consume it all.
yeah. The same leaders who are like, oh man, kids these days don't have any loyalty to their customers, and I was like, or to their companies. I'm like, you have no loyalty to these people. So, like, I was like, unless you're actually investing in them and demonstrating loyalty, like, what can you actually do? I was like, people are hungry to, yeah, to up level, to upskill, to up their career. So if folks aren't getting those experiences, yeah, they're going to leave.
There's a very, I would call, lack of a better term, famous talk track from Jeff Weiner, the past CEO of LinkedIn, where he talks about next play. Are you familiar with that term?
No.
So next play came from a basketball coach. I want to say he was in Nebraska. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
chop the story up, but you can Google it.
Yes.
Basically, every time the players made a shot or missed a shot, he was on the sidelines yelling, "Next play, next play, next play." And
Mm-hmm.
the impetus of that was, regardless of what happens, you win, you lose, take a second, think about it, learn, and move to the next thing.
Yes.
And uh, you know, Jeff brought this into the company and basically would echo this through the entire organization. That as employees, we should always be thinking about next play. Literally, from
Mm.
my very first day at LinkedIn to my first one-on-one with my boss asked me, "What do you want to do next?" And I was like, "I
Mm.
can't even log into my computer yet." And you're asking me what job I want next? And
Yes.
he's like, that's my job as your leader, is to figure out what your next play is and to set you up for success. And I think
That's
that is
amazing.
a pinnacle of amazing leadership around this idea of, what do you want to do? And let's find a way to make that happen. And, this idea of having goals, and it's really kind of cemented this idea of goal setting. because once you hit the goal, you have to have the next thing to go after.
Yes.
You miss the goal. How do you need? What are you going to adjust to make it? And this is the idea of next play.
Yes, 100%. I love it. I'll say I played volleyball up through college, and I remember my high school coach. Well, just like the game of volleyball is you score a point and then everything stops, right? It's not like basketball where you just keep on going, you know.
Yeah.
And I played basketball too. And so as you're saying like next play, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I heard my high school coach, Mrs. Pancratz, say like she might have said something like that, but you know we have to like regroup, huddle, talk about things real quick for 5 seconds, and get back on the court, right? So it's like next play. Here we go. So yes, 100%. I get it. I feel it. I'm here for it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, this is an amazing conversation. I will share this in its entirety. I'm going to clip this up and share it around. This was an amazing conversation. You have a lot of interesting insights, and I think it's because you're so in tune with who you are. And however you went about getting to that, it's working out in your favor. And again, congratulations on the new role.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing that update on LinkedIn from you that you're owning your own business someday.
Yes, I am too.